Kate Mara plays Claire Wilson in the FX miniseries A Teacher. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby, here to ask you, Kate, what is something you learnt from a teacher? The show.
What is something I learned from a teacher? Well, I really didn't know much about male victimhood and how rare it is to talk about. I noticed that, even in preparing for the show, before most of our scripts were written, in the conversations that we had with friends and with, Hannah, our director, writer, the creator of the show, spoke with lawyers who have represented both survivor and whoa, sorry, it's really windy. And she learned that it's just very rare that or it's less likely for men to discuss it than it is for women. And so that was one of the reasons why I was excited to tell this story from both points of view, not just the predator's point of view, but also the survivor's point of view, to open that conversation up more. And, I didn't really know much about that. And so, I thought that was an exciting aspect of the show to put out there.
And do you think it's an important story to be telling in sort of a post Me Too world where a lot of the attention, rightly so, is focused on women that are abuse victims?
Yeah, I think it's really important, and I think that there's a reason we haven't seen that many stories about the male survivor's point of view. It's such a taboo thing, I think, to talk about, especially with men. And, the stereotypes are very much alive and real, where I think it's just much more of a, it seems to be much more rare for a male to talk about experience like this and or any type of abuse. The stereotype is the males should be the ones that are protecting and that are strong and all of these things, whereas I think a lot of women are definitely brought up to feel like it's okay to talk about your emotions and all of those things, which is it's just such a stupid stereotype, but it's very, very much alive. And so I do think that it's rare to tell this type of story from both points of view. And so, hopefully it becomes less rare.
Yeah. And I guess you had the perspective of the predator in terms of who you were playing in the series. What was it like for you to have to tap into that character and those motivations?
Again, not something that I think we see that often, the female being the predator. And it makes it, I've noticed that it definitely makes people quite uncomfortable. It should make people uncomfortable whether it's a male or a female in the role, for sure. But we're not used to seeing that, I don't think, from a woman, especially a younger woman. It is quite rare. It was definitely a challenging role, but we tried to, Hannah really wanted to make the character of Claire, despite her obvious illegal and immoral decisions and choices, we wanted to make her as relatable as possible in all other aspects of her life. And so hopefully when people are watching, especially in the episodes where or in the moments where we lead up to this affair or relationship, hopefully you find ways to relate to her, so that she doesn't just come across as a monster or, the evil character of the show. We want her to feel human. And, that's the hope. So as an actor, I was definitely leaning more into the ways that I could relate to her. And I found that to be helpful in trying to play her and not just judging her.
And like there's a film, A Teacher, that was made before this mini series. Do you think that, like, in terms of what you're talking about just then, actually having that, like extending it from a 2 hours like film to 10 sort of acts almost in telling the story is helpful in exploring that character and exploring those issues?
Definitely. I think, the more time you have, of course, the more opportunity you have to explore a situation. What I really loved about it and about the idea of it was that we were really going to focus on the consequences of it and not just the lead up to the relationship, or the relationship itself. I like that we were going to focus for more than half the series really on the consequences of it. And that definitely is different than the movie. It's definitely stands alone in that way.
Yeah. What was the biggest challenge for you?
The biggest challenge, I think probably trying to play Claire, with, like I said sort of before, without judgment, trying to make her as real and relatable as possible without justifying her behavior in any way. It was also, it's complicated just really because I at the time was a new mom, or I had a new baby, I should say. She was 3 months old, so I was literally, in the trailer caring for a 3-month-old, and then running back to set and playing this predator, really. So to switch on and off between the two, eventually, I did get quite used to sort of just compartmentalizing things, but it's a really crazy headspace to go in between those two extreme worlds,
Yeah.
So I really did I just had to really focus as intensely as I could in whatever it was that I was doing. So when I was on set playing this person, I had to attempt to not think about, the new love of my life, my child. And then vice versa, when I'm in my trailer, I really, usually you're in your trailer, for me, you're focusing on the next scene or you're prepping for whatever. I couldn't do that. I really had to focus then on my daughter. So to me, it was more of a life challenge and also a character challenge.
I think something else, I'm wondering, what was the most the most important scene, do you think, in the series?
Oh, well, the first one that comes to mind is definitely the final scene, because Eric finally finds his voice. And I think that it's so important for that to happen, just because he's not healed, or maybe not come to terms with everything, or I just think it's such a huge moment for the survivor of this type of thing to be able to look at the person across from you and tell them exactly what you've been thinking for 10 years. And I think so many people don't get that opportunity. And I know for Hannah that was really important. And so yeah, I think that moment is a very, very big one, and special one for the show.
And I think it touches on what you were sort of saying before, how you, through doing the 10 episodes, were able to explore the aftermath and the consequences of the actions of the characters. And that really, I think, speaks to, I would imagine, abuse victims, whether they're male or female, sometimes don't necessarily realize the severity of what they're going through at the time. And that it's maybe many years later that it's sort of, they can have some perspective and understand that, oh, I was in an abusive situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a really unique, it's a unique place to take the show, to be able to jump forward that far ahead. and to be able to have Eric, look at his little brother who's the same age as he was. It's just that, to me, in looking at documentaries and things about, people who have gone through abuse and survived that type of thing, I noticed a lot of people who have children, it really changes their perspective when they have kids, especially when the child becomes the age that they were when it happened. And so for Eric, it's the same thing for him, even though it's not his child, his little brother. I think that was a very powerful choice from Hannah, I think.
Yeah. What was the most challenging scene for you to film as an actress?
The most challenging scene, God, there's so many.
Yeah.
I do remember this scene when, I would say there are two that sort of come to mind, although the last scene was definitely a challenge. But the two that come to mind are one where Claire, when Eric go to the motel, they like escape to the motel and get drunk, and then she's like experiencing all of these different emotions, and then they have sex, and that's messy. That scene in general was pretty tricky. Just emotionally it was complicated, and so that was hard. But I would say the more difficult scene was the scene where after Claire has gotten out of jail and she's gotten a text from Eric, and she invites him over to her brother's house, and he shows up, and she basically says, like, I didn't love you, and like, go be a kid, and all of that I thought that was a really challenging scene for both of us and for our characters, to be going through all of that. And yeah, that was definitely a tricky one.
What do you think, when you're working on a show or a film that is as heavy as this, is there any levity on set, or is it just like you've got to be very focused on the subjects?
Oh God, yeah. Because like you said, it's like when, especially a show like this, where most of it is really intense and heavy for the characters. Nick and I really did. It was like a way of releasing the stress and panic that our characters are feeling sort of all the time. We would just like we'd get into hysterics, like just laughing at nothing. And it makes sense, it's neither of us really even had to make a joke. It really was a way of releasing a certain energy to be able to then continue to be emotional and as realistic as possible in these really intense scenes for the rest of the evening. So there was a lot of laughter on our parts. I think we deal with it in a very similar way, which was great for both of us to be able to, have each other to be in the same sort of headspace of things. But yeah, I think there's like this nervous laughter that for sure was there on a daily basis.
Often in like shows or films, like there's talk about like a sort of a male and a female lead needing a certain sort of chemistry. Is the chemistry for this kind of on-screen relationship different to what you're looking for in others?
I guess you'd think it should be, right? But I think because of the way Hannah wanted the show to feel, she wanted it to she wanted it to be complicated in some ways for people when they're watching, and for people to sort of get lost in their relationship and really believe that they have a chemistry and a connection despite the age and the obviously the moral conflict of it, of course, and the legal conflict of it. You did sort of want it to, you wanted the chemistry and the connection to feel as it would in a different scenario. I think that was important. But going into it, of course, we needed the Eric character to have certain characteristics that were very specific and different than Claire. So that was obviously a huge part of it as well.
Thinking more broadly sort of about you as an actress and your career and things like that, what brings you the most sort of joy as an actor with your the roles you choose or the performances you do? What just makes you go, this is great?
I really find the most joy in playing characters that are complicated and or challenging for me to play. If I read something or I hear a description of a character or a story that scares me a little bit, I always think, oh, that's probably a good scare. It's probably I think that things should challenge you in order for you to grow as a person and also an actor. So to me, that is one of the things that I do definitely look for. And I think that if you can just sort of phone in a character, then it's probably not one that you should maybe be playing, I find certain roles to be really helpful in the growth as an actor, and if it's not challenging, then I don't know how you can. So that's for sure something that I really strive to find.
Does a particular role come to mind which really challenged you and grew you in that way?
Well, there's also like the physical aspect of a challenge, right? So I played a Marine in this movie, Megan Levy. And it was definitely challenging just because I was training for it in a physical way, but also with a dog. I had a Marine dog who he and I both had to learn together from the ground up how to do very specific things. And it was such a great challenge. Like, I was so excited for I think it was like a month or two leading up to even the shoot. The dog would arrive at my house and we'd go in the backyard and and rehearse different scenarios and scenes. And it was such an exciting thing to be able to learn, especially because I was playing a real character. So that was definitely a challenge in a great way, and then also just when we did finally get to set in Spain, it was like 100 degrees and you're wearing all of the real gear and everything. And especially when there's like explosions and things happening, it does feel extremely realistic. And you've got to trust that you're able to sort of like control this massive animal who weighs more than you do. So anyway, that's a very long description.
Hello?
Oh, there you are. Hi.
There I am. Hello.
Oh, sorry, I don't know what happened.
No, that's all right. It was the internet.
Okay.
Last I heard, you said long story short.
Yeah, that was just for me a great challenge that every day I was so excited to be in.
Just to finish off the interview, Kate, if there was one thing that someone watching a teacher were to take away from having watched the series, what's something that you'd like them to take away from it?
I think the hope in making really anything is that people leave with a different perspective, or experience something or think about something that they wouldn't necessarily had before. I think that that's the beauty of my job, is to be able to be a part of different stories that people can relate to or not, and then take away, maybe have more empathy for different types of people's experiences or ways of life. That to me is such an exciting part of being an actor. So I think that's the hope sort of in general with anything.
Well, Kate, thanks so much for talking with us today. All the best for the upcoming awards for a teacher. And people watching this interview can go to goldderby.com where they can make their own award predictions, join the conversation, our forums, and keep a track of Hollywood's biggest awards. Thanks so much, Kate.
Thank you so much.